But within polyamory, there can absolutely still be betrayal. And typically that betrayal would occur when somebody has broken an agreement and gone against their partner's wishes, or they've gone against something that you both agreed together that you weren't going to do. Hey guys, what's up? It's Agnes. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. I'm a psychiatric nurse and therapist, and this video is a continuation along my lifestyle series. So we're talking about agreements within polyamory. And I say polyamory specifically, not non-monogamy generally, because this is quite a big topic, and polyamory are really, they're the rules that I best understand for. That is what I practice. So within polyamory, you will find people who tend to use the word agreement as opposed to rule. But essentially in this video, we are talking about the rules you might find in a polyamorous relationship. I think the reason that rule is not typically used is because that word does imply enforcement, it implies punishment, and I think it sounds quite restricting. I think it is quite a constrictive word. Constrictive? Is that a word? Now I'm not sure. Now that I've said it, I'm really not sure. But the word agreement, I think, says to me that two people have sat down and have had a mindful discussion about what they would like their situation to look like. So I think agreement feels more open-ended, more flexible, and just like it's come about from a more kind of caring place rather than perhaps an attempt to control your partner. I think the word rule to me says control. Dictatorship, if you will, is what rule says to me, and the polyamorous community on the whole does agree with me, which is why you'll see the word agreement used more than rules. So the reason that poly people have agreements, I would say the majority of these agreements come about not from a desire to have control over your partner, not from a desire to have a say over how your partner is conducting themselves in relationships, but more that discussing what agreements you might like to have in place, it's a very valuable base to use for a conversation with your partner. So for example, an agreement you might come across is that you won't go to your partner's favorite restaurant with somebody new. That maybe there is a place that is very special to them or you as a couple, and the idea is that you will not introduce new people to that place. So take the restaurant example. One part of this couple may have brought up, this place is really special to me, it's really special to us, and I would like it if you didn't take anybody new there. Now, you may have not considered that at all. Maybe you don't feel especially sentimental about places like that, and that's something that you could have potentially really upset them based on this conversation if it hadn't been had and you hadn't come to this agreement. So I think this is one of the reasons that agreements are so helpful, is because when you sit down with your partner and you discuss, okay, how do we want this to look? Is there anything that we feel should be really kind of out of bounds for new people? Then it can provoke a very interesting conversation, and you can become a lot more aware of what your partner desires, what they want this to look like, and maybe even some areas of insecurity. And now I'm not saying that everything that your partner proposes as an agreement, you should say, yeah, absolutely, let's do that. There will be a process of negotiation, and there might be something where your response might be, okay, well, I don't want to avoid that whole part of the country, for example, because it's special to our relationship. I don't want to avoid that whole town or that whole city, but I can avoid a specific establishment if that's what you tell me is important to you. So, you know, there could be a process of negotiating where you maybe don't 100% agree with that agreement, but you can come and meet in the middle somewhere, providing a sense of safety and security to your partner whilst not restricting you too significantly. So that is one of the reasons that I think we have agreements in polyamory, is so that you are not upsetting your partner really without realizing it. Because although we talk in polyamory about, well, my partner and I joke about how we can't cheat on each other. I mean, we can't cheat on each other because we have decided that we are able to explore things with other people. But within polyamory, there can absolutely still be betrayal. And typically that betrayal would occur when somebody has broken an agreement and gone against their partner's wishes, or they've gone against something that you both agreed together that you weren't going to do. That's one of the reasons why agreements are so important, is because I think it can provide a really stable framework for a couple who's maybe opening up their relationship, or even for two polyamorous people who have just met and are starting a relationship with each other, talking about kind of what are your boundaries here? What are your limits? What are things that are important to you? What are things that you would like to remain sacred to our relationship? And again, I'm not saying that all of these requests will be reasonable. Some people can use agreements in an overzealous fashion to try to cultivate a feeling of safety for themselves, but it will be like a false feeling of safety. So if you ask your partner to not go to your favorite restaurant with a new person, that doesn't mean that they're not going to fall in love with anybody else. Because within polyamory, the idea is that you are open to being in love with multiple people at the same time. So there is absolutely a limit to how safe these agreements are going to make you feel. And it's really important to be aware of that. And trying to not be naive in how safe that could make you feel, because ultimately your feeling of safety in polyamory comes from trust within your partner, your own self-esteem, your own sense of self-worth, and your own happiness levels, quite frankly. So having an agreement in place, it is not going to make a huge difference to that. So it's important to be really realistic with ourselves about what agreements will give us. So another area that you might find agreements, and these are a lot more serious than just like, please don't go to my favorite restaurant for a first date, because that's definitely like lesser end of the scale. The more sort of serious end of the scale might be that you have an agreement that you and your partner will marry each other and you won't marry other people. That maybe you and your partner, now this would probably look like your nesting partner or your anchor partner, which I realize I have not yet covered those words within my non-monogamous videos. Essentially, let me give you the highlights. Essentially, your nesting partner would be the partner that you have chosen to live with. Your nesting partner may be also your anchor partner, but your anchor partner doesn't have to be your nesting partner. So my husband is my anchor partner, but we don't live together. We don't nest. I mean, I do guess we do nest. Do we nest? Yes, we nest in a psychological and emotional nesting. We don't have a physical nest together. Does that make sense? When you describe somebody as your anchor partner, that typically looks like you have a pretty serious level of commitment with each other. Perhaps you are married. Perhaps you've made a legal commitment to each other. Perhaps you have children together. And essentially, that would be a very, very well established relationship. I would avoid using the word primary or main partner, but that's where anchor can come in handy. Because to describe someone as your main or primary partner kind of dismisses your other relationships as secondary, whereas using the word anchor, I think, doesn't imply that anybody is secondary. So that's a brief whistle-stop tour of nesting and anchor. Lesser on the spectrum, or an agreement that I discovered quite recently that I hadn't really heard of before, is a couple had agreed to not do any overnight stays. I think that one of the really, really important things to remember with agreements is that I feel the healthiest way to navigate polyamorous agreements is to have flexibility around almost all of them. So I think that an agreement may seem entirely appropriate when it is just you and your partner in the relationship. But then if you, say this is you over here, you meet somebody else, right?
Hello there.
And the agreement you have in place, no overnight stays, for example, may be appropriate while this relationship is very, very new. But if this relationship continues for years, for example, then the no overnight rule might actually become really, really inconvenient. So I feel the healthiest way to navigate polyamory is to recognize that if there is a lengthy, established and serious relationship, then agreements should be reviewed. I mean, agreements should be reviewed all the time anyway. But especially if another relationship has come along, which is really well established and it is serious, that's especially when an agreement has to be looked at again. And it may be found that an agreement for in a new relationship, when this is brand new, is totally appropriate. But when this relationship has become more well-formed and is more serious and it's not going anywhere, then that's when a review would be appropriate. And that discussion can be had again between the original poly couple. So agreements overall, they are incredibly important to honor in order to maintain trust in any relationship that you are in. But it's also vital that they can be flexible and that they can be reviewed and that they can be discussed, because it may be that an agreement suits you at some point, but down the line, it really doesn't suit you anymore. I know for my husband and I, we had a lot more agreements 4.5 years ago than we do now. I think that we had agreements in place at the beginning that felt important and it felt like they kept us safe. And now actually that we are a few years in, we are very secure in our situation. We have a huge amount of trust in each other when it comes to exploring relationships with other people. Now, just kind of quite naturally, some of our agreements have fallen away. We have discussed them over time, but they just didn't feel necessary anymore. It didn't feel like we needed that kind of safety blanket, I suppose. It is a pretty significant red flag when you come across a polyamorous couple that have loads of agreements. So if I met someone who had loads of agreements, that would say to me that there would be quite a significant lack of trust in that relationship. That there would maybe be a lack of self-exploration and self-analysis and self-reflection. I think that because agreements can be used to keep ourselves safe, that if a couple has a huge number of agreements, that would say to me that there was a lack of trust, and that's really a situation that I probably wouldn't want to get involved in. At the complete opposite end of the spectrum, if I met a couple that had 0 agreements, I would be hugely alarmed. I would be really, really alarmed, because if I came across a couple, I mean, typically when I say coming across a couple, I have connected with the man in the relationship. I'm bi, by the way. Let me just out myself. I'm bi, but my attraction to women is, it's like a very, very, very specific thing. So typically the people I will end up being involved with are men. So typically I'm having a conversation with the man part of the relationship, but when I'm talking to someone, I'm very interested in what their relationship looks like with their partner. I never want to know a huge amount of details, but I would typically, for my safety and my security, find out things like, what agreements do you and your partner have in place? And if I met someone that said they had no agreements, that would absolutely ring alarm bells for me, because that would say to me that they have not had these pretty vital discussions, and that either they are very, very new to polyamory, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think there's certainly a decent amount of education that should go along with this lifestyle in order to make sure that you are doing it in a responsible way with accountability, transparency, all those really, really important things in non-monogamy. Or if the couple was not brand new to non-monogamy, but they still didn't have any agreements whatsoever, then that would say to me that they have not discussed this as much as they should have. And again, I think that that comes down to like a non-monogamous education. There is a responsible way of doing this. And if you have gone from being monogamous, for example, and opened up your relationship, and you have not read books, listened to podcasts, reached out to people who are doing this already, done coaching with like a polyamorous professional, then I think that that is a really, really risky way of going about it. And generally, I find it hard to trust people that I think are going about things in a kind of risky, potentially slightly reckless way. And no agreements whatsoever would say to me that there could potentially be some recklessness there. I would always seek to learn more. I would kind of say, no agreements at all. That's interesting. Tell me how that works for you. But I'd be fully anticipating to get an answer that was not satisfactory, and therefore I would not want to be involved in that situation. So that is it for this video, guys. Just a brief conclusion, because I've chatted about this quite a bit more than I thought I would. So we use the word agreements over rules. In my mind, agreements should be flexible, they should be reviewed, and they should be appropriate for the relationship and the situation. And it's a red flag if you've got too many, but it's a red flag if you've got absolutely none. Those are the highlights, guys, in conclusion. Okay, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, everything. I want to know it all. Down in the comment section, guys, down in the comment section. Please like and subscribe. It would mean a huge amount to me. And I will see you in my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.